you could.
We used to end with that song, and while it's really central to our project, it's a little bit of a downer, so we have two more for you. This next song is about a place that is really kind of dear to both Julian and to me, but for kind of different reasons. This is a photograph of the root cellar out at Heart Mountain, the Japanese-American incarceration camp in Wyoming. And this root cellar was one of two on the property built by the Japanese-Americans who were incarcerated there. And they were both enormous, about the size of a football field. One of them still exists, kind of, to this day. It doesn't look like this anymore. It's falling apart, the roof is caving in, and they're raising money to sort of rebuild some of it. But it's a really interesting place because it's a place where, yes, vegetables and things were stored, but also where we know teenagers and other young adults would kind of sneak out around the barbed wire of camp to go hang out in the root cellar, to spend some time out of their barrack apartments away from their parents. So when we went out to Heart Mountain last October, about a year ago, we spent time in this completely falling apart, very unsafe root cellar structure, playing music, just sort of putting sound, putting some life back into this place. And as Julian talked about before that last song, kind of keeping in mind all of the silences that are part of this history of Japanese-American incarceration. And some of those silences for me are really personal, because my grandmother, Misa Aoyama, was incarcerated at Heart Mountain with her brother and her parents when she was just a few years younger than I am now. She was, halfway through college, pulled out, sent to Pomona Assembly Center, and then she volunteered to take the very first train out to Heart Mountain by herself. Her parents, her brother didn't go with her. She went to maybe set up the mess hall or the hospital, kind of get camp ready for the rest of the Japanese Americans that would join her there. And she stayed at Heart Mountain for about a year. And this is all that I know about her time there. As someone who spends most of my time studying this history, this is all I know of this person who was a really important part of my childhood. And while this was frustrating at first, the silence, I think I've come to terms with it a little bit more. And thinking about how this is such an important part of this narrative, of any kind of narrative of trauma or violence. And so thinking about ways that we honor these silences while we also do the work of historians and learn as much as we can about these places and the lives that were lived there, to kind of put back together and speculate about what it was like to be alive at this time. So this next song does a little bit of both. It kind of honors the silences of so many folks who didn't talk about their time in camp, but also, tells the story of two teenagers sneaking out around the barbed wire to go dance in the root cellar and find a little bit of joy in what was a really dark time. It's called Two Candles in the Dark.
Don't it feel like a movie, teaching this girl how to waltz? Left feet she might have 3, but she sure feels nice in my arms. Old folks sing an old song, playing the agreed upon key. My eyes are stuck on her, her eyes don't leave her feet. On this girl, no class ring, maybe this is more than a slot. Brown boots, a dirt floor, we're dancing like two candles in the dark. Pretty outlaw calls a quarter past, like knuckles on a barrack door. She got a brother down in Topaz, I saw that name once in a jewelry store. Wind around past the skaters and pond, just looking for a cut in the wire. She got a key to the cellar door. I don't ask questions, man, just stand there inspired. Oh, this girl, she gets why I this the garden at the Golden Gate Park? Young blood and old songs, we're dancing like two candles in the dark. Tell you, man, it's like some movie, and she's just tailor-made for the part. Lamps licking the roof beam, she's got good looking down to an art. Hear the old folks sing them old songs, the background just fades away. Our coffee can fire's almost gone. She says, I gotta get out of this place. Oh, this girl, a pinpoint. The moment you feel a spark. Brown boots, a dirt floor. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. We're dancing like two candles in the dark. This is going to be our last song for the night. We're not an encore kind of band.
Only at a bar.
Yeah. What are we drinking? We're not Kishibashi, not here, I don't know where we're one of the types.
We'll follow Emily, yeah.
Emily will take us to or any of you. We're easy
So we'll follow anyone.
You sound terrible. Good thing our advisors in here. First of all, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for setting up this show. Everyone at the temple, Rickshaw, everybody in the community who has welcomed us with open arms. Taiko especially, who we played with every time we've been here. It's just been really wonderful to sort of be able to share these songs with you all. Because I know for a lot of y'all, there is personal connection to a lot of the things we're singing about. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. I'm going to end with a song that is very personal to me. I'd like to start by telling the story of another song. A song not by an Asian, which is most songs. Song by a really great songwriter named Ron Sexsmith. He's a Canadian songwriter. He's one of the most beautiful writers who's ever lived. So if you take anything away from this night by John Okada's No No Boy and Ron Sexsmith albums. He's a Canadian songwriter, and when I was a kid, I found myself doing this kid journalist thing for the newspaper, like that movie Almost Famous, where I would hang out with rock and roll bands when I was 15. And had this press pass that would get me into every club in Nashville where I grew up. It was cool. And Ron Sexsmith was coming to town, and I was told to review his record, and he had this song on it called Lebanon, Tennessee, and Lebanon, Tennessee is not very far from Nashville, Tennessee, where I did in fact grow up. And I asked Ron about this because the song Lebanon, Tennessee is really one of the most beautiful songs. You'd think Lebanon, Tennessee is just like paradise on earth, when in fact it is a piece of crap town. Is anyone from Lebanon, Tennessee? You wouldn't admit it. I haven't been there in 14 years, so it might have gotten a lot nicer. No, probably not. Anyways, thus is the power of songwriting. Ron tells me, he's like, I've been there now, so I know that you're right, it kind of sucks. But when he wrote it, he was a bike courier in Toronto, which is just like the most perfect job for a songwriter. And he got this package that he was supposed to deliver, and the return address was Lebanon, Tennessee, and he just thought, that just seems like the most beautiful place in the world. little did he know. That's kind of what this next song is. This next song is called Little Saigon. And in my mind, as a child of a refugee, which is not how my mom would have ever described me. Julian, he's a child of a refugee. Described me as a pain in the ass, probably. You know, but having that history, especially coming from a country like Vietnam, and not even that South Vietnam, a country that doesn't exist anymore, from a city called Saigon, which is erased from the map and now it's called Ho Chi Minh City. You know, for that legacy from my mom, this is a song that kind of imagines. It's my love on Tennessee, a place that doesn't really exist. Yes, there are little Saigons around the country, but they're mostly just kind of malls with really good food. Yeah, it's just imagining a place which I can't ever get back to, which is true for a lot of us, not only because a country stops to exist in the most extreme cases, or people are displaced, but folks who just move, you know. It's a very relatable thing, I think, for all of us, just that home that you can't ever go back to, or that you've heard about, you imagine. So we'll leave you with this one, and we thank you a lot. We'll take a little break and then come back. If you want to stay and ask us a few questions, we'll do that. And yeah, we can't thank you enough. This is called Little Saigon. I heard about a place called Little Saigon. Everybody's got my face, so mine won't have to grow so long. Palm trees, a terrace, see the cafe where I belong. Oh, I think I'd like to go to this place, Little Saigon. One day I'm gonna go to a place called Little Saigon. Buy shoes in a little shop and silks from Vietnam. Take lessons on the Dan Bao and play an old folk song. Oh, I think I'd like to go to this place, Little Saigon. Je vais aller à Little Saigon. J'enverrai une lettre en français à ma maman. C'est pas Saigon, maman, mais je serai content longtemps. Oh, je voudrais aller à Little Saigon. One day I'm gonna go to a place called Little Saigon. Listen to the CBC band loud with my headphones on. Walk around the indoor mall where the language sounds like song. Oh, I think I'd like to go to this place, Little Saigon. Yes, I think I'd like to go to this place, Little Saigon.
Furthermore, Saporiti and Aoyama. Stick around for today's session. I'll have process the evening's events. We'll give them a moment. I'd like to thank you for all coming to the show, and I'd like to thank the community organizations that came and presented their information in the community resource room. The Japanese American Citizens League. They're doing important work to try to keep the memories alive of the internment camps and making sure that we don't forget what happened there. OCA Chicago, Asian American organization, development group. Chinese American Museum of Chicago, Rickshaw, the Asian Giving Circle, Japanese American Service Committee, Lawrence and Argyle, Asian Pop-Up Cinema, and Virtual Asian American Art Museum. Also, I would like to thank all the volunteers here, from the people at the refreshment stand, ticket booth, lights, staging, merchandise people. I think they still have some merchandise left over there, so please visit them. I'd like to thank Koetsu Taiko, especially Jason Matsumoto, Emily Harada, Annabelle Harano, Dana Johnson, and Ryan Taguri, and all the administrative staff here at MBT. And if they're ready, they can come back for the Q&A. Any questions? I have a question. All right. How did you, of all the songs in your catalog, how did you pick the songs to be in your album?
So the question was, of all the songs in our catalog, how did we pick the 11 that are on the album? And it was kind of pragmatic. It was what I had started recording with a producer. We had recorded a session of 17 songs and chose like 9 of those, and then added the second to last song, Two Candles in the Dark, and another one, I forget which one, and that's how we came about. But we wanted to represent several different Asian American experiences, so there's songs about a couple college kids of Chinese descent in Boston who go to BU and Harvard, maybe, and there's Vietnamese stuff and Japanese American stuff. So I was trying to make sure that we don't just push one narrative and kind of make these stories stay next to each other. Yeah.
How did you get your professor to actually let you do this as your dissertation?
A very practical question.
Yeah, this comes with a don't try this at home warning for any PhD students out there. So first of all, my advisor, Bob Lee, he's great. He wrote a really seminal book in Asian American Studies called Orientals, and he's super tenured. And on the way out, with little concern for the job placement of his advisees. But so I started working on these songs. They came out of the research. It's just this project that just kind of flowed out because that's my job, or was my job, was just being a songwriter. For a long time, I was just in an indie rock band, and so I know how to write songs and sort of analyze the world in a much deeper way than I know peer-reviewed academic journal writing. So I decided I wanted to start using that to look into these histories. And Bob came to the first concert that I put on for some of my friends at an art gallery in Providence, and I was making some snide comments like, oh, I wish Brown would let me just make an album for my dissertation. And Bob came up afterwards and he said, hey man, why don't you just like do this for your dissertation? Now we're too far gone to turn back. He's actually like done a gig with us. So it's cool. And Erin's advisor is also on board, and they come to support us at our gigs. It's really cool. So.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your thought process in deciding to use the photograph in the song about the suicides.
Yeah, it's a tough one because it's definitely the most capable of being criticized for being exploitative, for being shocking, just having shock value and things like that. For me, you know, waking up every morning is my job to dig through just thousands of photographs and visuals as part of this project, going through all these archives that exist. It's one of the pictures that stood out to me, like it always stands out to me as just terribly representative of that severing of the camp experience for a lot of families and a lot of people. That decapitation, really removing head from body. It's gruesome, it's grotesque, and I think that was the one we've gotten pushback on, the one piece in the set that we've really gotten pushback on before. But I think the reason we stick with it is because to have that slow pull, where you don't really know what you're seeing and then you realize it, I don't know. A lot of what we do is not necessarily to give answers or arguments, otherwise we'd be writing regular dissertations. It's more of to ask questions and to let you sit with something, which you don't have to, right? We say you don't have to look at this image. You choose to look at this image. I don't know. I guess the answer would be what does it do for you? What does it provoke in you? And that would be the answer of why I use it, because it usually does provoke something in the audience. And I think that's worth looking at. And also just to represent these people who, you're not going to see that image in the museum.
And we talked a lot about using that image and giving the warning ahead of time and how much we talked about it, but it's something that I think, like a lot of the visuals that Julian has put together, it's in the archive, and there are a lot of different angles of that photograph, and it's kind of part of the story, but that you don't, like you were saying, you're never going to see in a museum or a textbook, so it is kind of part of that excavation process too, of this is here, these images, these stories are here, and we're putting them in front of you.
Sure.
Hi. You kind of answered this in your last question there, sort of comment, but I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your process in going through these photographic archives, like if you're ever looking for something specific, or if you have like, an objective when you're sifting through, or if you just sort of slowly discover.
Yeah, it's both. I mean,